Welcome to Quantum Touch Radio, Supercharging Your Life with Jennifer Noel Taylor. Jennifer takes you on a quantum journey to discover how to supercharge your life working with universal healing quantum touch principles. Imagine knowing how to accelerate, revitalize, and engage in ways you've never experienced. In this hit show, we reveal powerful, simple steps to create more abundance, better health, emotional and mental vibrancy, and happier relationships. Imagine being simple and supercharged to cultivate life force energy for yourself and others. Get ready to be astounded. Now, here's your host.
Welcome to Quantum Touch Radio. I'm your host, Jennifer Noel Taylor. And today we have on the show Miriam Hunter. She has an amazing instructor and she's been active with Quantum Touch since 2004. So if your math skills are pretty good, that's 17 years at least. And it's a long time. So she's long time. She's been working with clients, teaching and mentoring. And she also works for us headquarters in our curriculum department, helping out with creating all the manuals and putting into our programs. And so welcome, Miriam. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Jennifer. I'm really excited to be here. It's been such an awesome journey so far, and Quantum Touch just keeps opening new doors. So I'm really excited to talk with you about it today.
Awesome. Well, I also want to say for our listeners, if you'd like to call into the show with questions, we'd love to answer your questions. The call-in number is 1-800-930-2819. So if you are struggling with something and want some help or just have questions, please call in. So I always ask people who come onto the show, what was your aha moment that got you started with energy healing and or quantum touch?
Well, it was a number of synchronous events that kind of brought me to Quantum Touch. My kids were school age and I thought, oh boy, what do I want to be when I grow up, right? So I started looking at things. I started with some art so that I could just get quiet enough to kind of hear that small voice of guidance. And from there, it was really just a string of events that led me to Quantum Touch. And when I called the only instructor that was near me, about an hour away, I asked her, tell me about Quantum Touch. And she said, well, it works. And I said, okay. And she had taught all kinds of things. She had a list, an arm long of things, other modalities and things that she did. And I said, well, do you teach other things? Do you utilize other modalities? And she said, well, some, but Quantum Touch is my go-to. And, I've got a class this Saturday and I've got one spot left, right? So I thought, okay, that must be for me. And I went to the workshop, and really within the first 30 minutes, I just had this, I'm home. This is what I've kind of been doing my whole life, but I didn't have words to explain it. I didn't have, a languaging around what I had kind of been sensing or doing. And I just knew from that instant that I wanted to teach. I wanted to work with people and give them opportunities to develop their own skills in working with energy. And I've never looked back and regretted a moment of it. It is just always miraculous and always amazing. So.
Yeah, well, that's a great story. I love it when we get synchronicities that guide us to where we need to be. And one thing you said is really interesting. You had to get quiet to listen to the still small voice. Can you describe more about what is that still small voice And what do you think that is, and how people can tune into that?
Well, I think everyone has a guidance system. Sometimes we're too busy to listen to that. And I know for me, the easiest way to find that and listen to it was through art or through a medium where I could really get quiet. For some people, it might be meditation. For some people, it might be listening to music. For me, it was getting into that space, the zone. Most artists know of a zone, that you kind of go into when you begin to paint or you begin to draw. Sometimes it takes longer to get into the zone. Other times it's really easy. You're just like there. And for me, it was getting into that zone and then being able to listen with a quiet, still mind. And hear. And when I say hear, it's more of everybody has six senses, right? And you might be a hearer, you might be a seer, you might be someone who feels, you might have gut, kind of like, this is what I need to do. And so that small voice can come in different ways. It could come kind of in a video or a hunch or anything like that. For me, I felt more like, okay, this is the way I need to go, or that seems to sparkle, so kind of follow that path of what feels fun and sparkly and light. That's what it is for me. So.
When you hear the still small voice, have you ever thought it was crazy?
There have been moments when and like I said, when I say the voice, it isn't necessarily, Miriam, you need to do this, right? Sometimes it's just when someone says something to me, because the small voice can come through other people too. And if someone makes a suggestion and I know, oh, I've got to do that, that scares me, but I know it's the right thing and I know it's going to take me where I need to go. But sometimes when you hear it for the first time, it feels like, oh dear, right?
Well, I like to call that your global GPS, your like God positioning system or
Right.
guidance positioning system. And I believe it's always speaking to us. So that whole idea of ask and you shall receive, that's a biblical concept, applies. And I've seen it in my own life. And typically, sometimes that voice is, sometimes it gives us guidance we don't really want to hear. That's one. Or it gives us guidance that's perhaps a little bit out of the box that I think is hard for people. And it's something I'm really fascinated by, because I feel like when people are really stuck or their life really sucks, it gets that way because you haven't been listening to your guidance. And so the guidance is there to get you into a better place. But sometimes the stuff you need to do is really hard. I want to give some more concrete examples. I'd love for you to give examples too, but I know that I've worked with people with the energy where the guidance had been saying they need to leave a relationship, or they need to do something that's hard, and or need to give up something, like give up alcohol or give up a bad habit. I think we've all gotten that type of guidance.
Right.
So I was wondering if you had any examples from like yourself or clients, and the resistance perhaps and the result.
Sure. So, well, I just for myself, once I realized, okay, this is what I need to be doing, then you're like, okay, well, if this is what I need to be doing, how do I make that step to do it? Right. Because one class is, even though I was playing with the energy and learning things, I hadn't quite gotten to the place where I regularly was able to kind of follow the energy or follow that voice, right? And so part of just doing the quantum touch techniques opens you more to understanding the language that energy speaks to you, so that you can more easily hear the voice or get quiet or discern, yes, that's it, and it's not that. I had a person I had been going to see kind of on a regular basis, and the first time the voice kind of came up to me was, she said, "Oh, Miriam, you should." And first of all, I don't like the word should, but when she said this, "I think you should come to this thing," I just went, "Oh, that feels so much like I'm being drawn toward it," but I know that's the right direction, but I had all these excuses in my head: money, time, I've still got small children. I've got, how am I going to fit that in? And the source energy has a plan. And if you trust, it makes it much easier. If you start coming up with excuses and saying, no, I can't, or what about this, then it gets, source just makes a way to make it happen, right? Whether you resist or not.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, from what I've seen, the guidance or spirit or source or God or whatever people call it, always, let's say, wins the battle of wills. Because, like, let's say you've been guided to give up something like drinking or caffeine or whatever, and you're resisting it, your body will eventually get to the point where you're going to have to. So I just find that interesting. Like, it kind of comes to a head at some point. So my feeling is, when you're following your guidance, to just follow it and not drag it out too long, because things just get worse
Right.
until you follow it. So
it's no longer
it's a
a
weird,
whisper, it's yelling at you, right?
like, screams, like the universe, like, how bad are you gonna let it get before you start following your guidance? So I've just noticed that personally too. So I know for those of you out there maybe having some guidance and feeling resistance to it, might be, explore the idea of maybe leaning into it a little bit. But anyways, we're going to go on a break, and when we come back, we'll talk a little more about following guidance, and we'll take your questions if you have any, and we'll be back. Well, welcome back, everyone. You're listening to Quantum Touch Radio. I'm your host, Jennifer Noel Taylor. We're talking about supercharging your life and also divine guidance. We were on that topic, a topic I'm particularly fascinated by. I think, especially in this time where so many people are struggling with money and all sorts of things. So I'm going to dive right in here. If somebody has hit kind of rock bottom, which it seems like a lot of people are right now with COVID, they're hitting like their breaking points for a lot of people. What would you suggest as far as, the just hitting that point, and how to hear their guidance and maybe get out of these challenges?
Right. Well, in Quantum Touch, we talk about, energy comes in on the breath. We breathe and sweep. We utilize our tools and techniques in Quantum Touch to bring in more life force energy. And on that life force energy, and with that life force energy, is information, energetic information. And so if you have the opportunity to, or have already taken a Quantum Touch class, utilize, first of all, those techniques that you've learned. And you can certainly just get a book or do any of the online courses. And we also have virtual courses now that are really easy to do from your own living room or dining room or wherever you have your computer set up. What happens when you start using the techniques is there is a communication. You start creating this communication with that inner self, that higher self, that greater knowledge. And there are a lot of ways to come about it, but in Quantum Touch, that's the first way that we begin, is with the foundational techniques. And that allows for information to come up. Our bodies are always talking to us. Our surroundings are always talking to us. Our friends are always, if there's conflict, that there's something wrong. And in quantum touch, when we're looking at things, when issues arise, we're looking at it as a communication from the energy that just says, this is a place where you maybe need to pay attention. Maybe you need to have a little bit more love for yourself, and bring in more life force energy to assist you to get over whatever the issue is. And that to me has been the greatest gift of quantum touch, is that life force energy, and then what happens when you are utilizing it and reinforcing it and amplifying the vibrational resonance of it, so that you are able to maybe see more clearly, or hear that little voice more clearly, or synchronous things start to happen just right in front of you, or when you are looking for that parking spot that's, everybody is out at the outlets today. Oh my goodness, there's no parking spot. And then you think, no, I'm sure that there's a parking spot for me. And there it is, right there, right next to the outlet you want to go into, right? So it's always about energy and inviting more life force energy in.
Yeah, we've had a lot of stories about the physical healing. So I really like this topic of how we can use energy for other things, like real world applications.
Like finding that
And
parking spot.
yeah, like finding the parking spot. So I would love to hear, you talk about the guidance, do you have any specific examples of how you've used energy to solve, let's say, financial problems or other issues?
Yes. I'll start with one. Well, I have two kind of travel issue things that came up, and where quantum touch was very helpful. One was I was traveling with my daughter. We stopped in Paris, but we're going on to Lourdes, and I was actually teaching a class there. And we had traveled that day. We had gotten to the airport in Paris. We'd gotten the rental car, driven out to where we were supposed to stay that night, and arrived there. And the host said, no, you don't have a reservation. And I was certain not only had I had one reservation, I had had two reservations, because I had first gone through kind of a booking agency. And then I was like, oh, but if I go through their individual website, then they're going to get more money. They aren't going to have to pay this booking agency. So I canceled the booking agency one, but kept the reservation in their individual one. And she said, no, once you canceled the one, we canceled the other, because we didn't think you were going to show up. And I just, it was one of those, oh no, we've been traveling for 14 hours. We're in a country where we don't speak the language very well. And now our place that we were going to sleep tonight is not the place we're going to sleep tonight. And so it was very frustrating. We were tearful because we were just exhausted. And I just thought, okay, the first thing that I always need to do is just step back and start breathing and sweeping and bringing in the energy again, because something's going to turn up, and something's going to turn up better. And I've been very excited about this place that we were going to stay, because it was on this beautiful little stream, and they had some outdoor areas where you could eat. And the woman who was the hostess there actually had done some energy work herself. And I was very excited about, just the opportunity to be in that space. Obviously, it wasn't supposed to happen that way. And she said, well, wait a minute, let me call down the road. It was only about a quarter mile down the road. And I know they don't do miles there, but in my mind, it's a quarter mile down the road to this next place. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to keep breathing and sweeping and see what happens. Sure enough, they had a vacancy. And when we got there, what we realized was not only was it a vacancy, but it was a suite. And for the same price that we would have been paying at the other place, we got our dinner included. And there was a balcony that we had attached to our room that was overlooking this beautiful stream. So it was all much, much better and far exceeded our expectations. But it was in the beginning moments when she said, no, there's no reservation. I just thought, oh, how can this be, right? But the energy had a better plan.
I think that's the hard part for people is when things seem like they're falling apart for people, that there could be a better plan than what you had in mind.
Right.
I think that's really a key point. And to hold that attitude as well when things aren't working out as planned. I have a story. I'll share a story with divine guidance as well. So back in 2019, my boyfriend of 6 years broke up with me, and I was devastated. And like obviously, like I didn't want that to end. I in my head, I wanted to get back together, so I was holding on for a while, and that was in February 2019, and then 6 months later, I was still holding on in my head, and I had and my divine guidance said, you got to let that go. He's actually moved on with somebody else. And I knew he moved on with someone else. Like and it had been, my divine guidance had been saying that for a little while, but it kind of hit you really need to let this go. You got to stop holding on. And it's divine guidance definitely got strong. And I'm like, all right, whatever, I'll let it go. The next day I held a party at our house and this man shows up at the party, and I started talking to him, and he turned out to be the one. And so divine guidance knows what it's doing. And in retrospect, this my current partner is a much better fit than my last one was. So I just think we just have to trust that when something falls out of our life or something's not working out very well, that there's a better plan if we can kind of get on board with it and let go of whatever's not working, which can be really hard. But
yes.
I think relationships are really hard for people if they're feeling guided that maybe time to move on and they don't want to. And the guidance is coming multiple angles, when your friends are telling you it's time to move on, and guidance is saying it's time to move on, and the person you're with is wanting to move on, like perhaps you should move on. So just an example of just really following that guidance and trusting that the universe, I guess, I think this is hard for people too. I love your perspective on this. We have a few minutes to our break. Is this idea that the universe has our back, rather than the universe is a scary, dark, and horrible place where bad things happen. And we have like 2 minutes till break, but I want to get your thought on that.
Oh, I absolutely believe that the universe is always lifting us up and pushing us in the right direction. And sometimes it might not feel like the direction that we want to go in, but the universe is always conspiring in our best interests. And if we can let go of some of that control and just allow for ourselves to be shown, the universe is more than happy to not only show us, but deliver more than we can even expect or imagine.
Yes. I think that the other biblical principle, I don't know why all the biblical stuff is coming up today, but all things work together for good.
Right.
That's right. And that's really, I believe that's really the case. It's not just a platitude to make you feel better. If you're willing to let go of your preconceived notions of how things should work, which can be really hard. And So with that said, we're going to go on our next break and then we'll be back. Oh, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to Quantum Touch Radio. I'm your host, Jennifer Noel Taylor. Today on the show, we have Miriam Hunter, long-term quantum touch instructor. And we were getting on the topic of divine guidance and that the universe has your back, and these ideas that, if you can open your heart and follow the divine flow. But one of the things I wanted to talk about is like when bad things happen, when things that we perceive as negative and what that means. So I was wondering if you had any stories about, let's say, something you didn't like and how could that possibly be the universe having your back? So.
Well, one story that comes to mind, I was driving from a beach vacation and going back home, and it's usually about a 3-hour drive, but I have to go over a 4-mile bridge, and it's a lot of heavy traffic because I live outside the Washington, D.C. area, and my transmission started slipping, and it started getting worse, and I was approaching the bridge, and there were very large trucks right behind me. And I thought, oh boy, we need to get across this bridge because there's no way to go right or left. It's just the bridge. And I started breathing and sweeping, talking to my car. We're a good car. We're going to get across the bridge, breathing and sweeping and using all the techniques that we have with quantum touch. And I did make it across the bridge. And not only that, but made it 14 more miles through a very busy interstates coming out and coming in, and on ramps and off ramps. And at the point at which the transmission totally failed, it was just cleared up, and there was enough space and nobody in the right-hand lane that I could just drift right over to the side and stop. And as it turned out, my husband was about 15 minutes behind me. So we called the tow truck, and it turned out that the location where the car had totally died was 1.1 miles from a dealership that could repair it. And the tow truck that came was our insurance would only cover for 1 mile. So we had to pay for the 0.1 mile beyond that. But what turned out was I got a whole new transmission. So basically I have a brand new car. I was safe. Everything was taken care of. We didn't have to pay anything except for that 0.1 mile for the tow. So it's interesting how the universe has your back, even when you think it doesn't, when you think, oh no, I'm on this bridge and my transmission is slipping, but everything was good and I got safely off and everything was taken care of. And I now have basically a brand new car with a whole new brand new transmission. And a lot of times when these kind of things happen, it's not just about the cars, where have I maybe been overdoing, and I need a reset for myself, right? Because everything that is attached to us in some way is also giving us information. So if the transmission has just had it, then maybe I've been running too much. Maybe I've been doing too much, and it's time for me to also slow down. So it was a way that the energy got my attention, but did it in a manner that was safe and also gave me a solution. So.
Yeah. That's interesting. The universe is giving you a gift, but not in your typical way that we are used to receiving gifts.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes when those, I know Richard calls them dark miracles, when they show up, it's really just a place and a time for us to revisit or look at where maybe are we headed in the wrong direction, or where do we need a reset, a pivot? Where do we maybe need to look inside and say, am I truly following my path right now? Or is there something I need to look at so that I can either let that go or move forward in a different way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I have a story too around the dark miracles. I think some people may know this story, but I at the end of last year, I got a letter from my bank, the Quantum Touch Bank that we've been banking with for the last 20 years. And they said, we don't like you anymore. Well, in their nice speak, they said, we've decided to terminate our relationship with you. And it really pissed me off when I got it. I'm like, well, this sucks. I mean, I've been trying to deal with a lot already, and then we get this because changing banks is a lot of work. We had so many transactions coming into the business, in and out. We have merchant services. I mean, it was like just what I need, another job. Thank you, universe, And it turned into a big hassle because I had trouble getting another bank where my merchant service could accept it. So I had to end up getting a bank over here in Hawaii. And that was the only way. It was the only solution, was to get a bank account here in Hawaii. And which means that I had to get a DBA in Hawaii. And overall, I think it ended up being a really good thing because there's a lot of laws in California that got harder and harder to follow as far as doing a business in California, because we were in California. So although I was really upset initially, it like provided the opportunity to pivot and change where we do business, where the rules are a little easier to follow here in Hawaii than California. So overall, it was a good thing, but it was like pulling teeth. And I remember I got all triggered and got online with the Better Business Bureau and started getting mad at the bank. And I fought it, for at least a month until I just finally said, oh, whatever. All right, I got to switch banks. So I do believe, if we're looking at the energy that if I had been feeling before it was time to get out of California before I got that letter from the bank, but I hadn't wanted to because it's a lot of work. And so the universe again saying, well, we were guiding you to get out of California before, but now we're forcing it to happen because apparently you're not following guidance. So now it's going to happen. So I just find that really fascinating that, we get these little hints of guidance until we have to follow it. And so, yeah, I love the divine guidance idea. So, yeah. I wanted to address too, I'm going to start this topic. I know a lot of people, a lot of emails that get in the office and a lot of calls of people are really struggling with money right now. A lot of people, lost their job with COVID, and the economy is weird and the housing market's really crazy. And so, if you have a client how would you tell a client to use the energy with money? Maybe helping them with their financial situation.
So it's interesting because last year, one of the things that I actually was working on for myself is building up more of my business. And what I thought, okay, if I'm asking for, building up the business, I'm looking for more clients, I'm looking for, larger class sizes. Because I'm thinking in my logical mind, this is the way I'm going to go about getting it. And energy doesn't work logically. Energy works energetically, and so it can surprise you. And so I had all these very logical ideas about, okay, how I'm going to build the business, how I'm going to get a little bit more financially stable there. But what actually happened when the shutdown started happening, I had to let my office go. So rent that I had been paying, considerable rent each month, I no longer was paying. So what I thought was going to be income because I had more clients and more students in class actually was I had more income because I didn't have to pay the rent, because Quantum Touch did a wonderful job of coming around and allowing virtual classes and things like that. So I think part of what I talk to clients is about is if you can get out of your own way and allow for the energy to show you the way, then it's going to be a lot easier, and it may come in unexpected ways. Now, in terms of other things that we're doing with Quantum Touch, our Manifesting Miracles class has a lot of really fabulous techniques to bring forward and manifest things that you're looking to bring forward in your life, and whether that's money or relationship or job kind of situations. The tools are there for that, and working with actually your future self to bring that closer to you. And so those kinds of things are really, really exciting, and have been doing a lot of good, and for the folks who have taken those classes and are familiar with those techniques.
Yes. Well, one thing that I learned through COVID, which was part of my guidance as well, which was the energy of it, is, an opportunity to view the reality as a little more fluid.
Yes.
So I was viewing money as a very logical construct, money in, money out. And there's only a certain amount that's possible, based on, my revenue from work. And then with COVID, it kind of forced me to get out of that, because I thought, well, okay, we did slow down as a business. So I thought, well, what are other ways to bring in money other than through business? What else can I do? So I was able to bring in money in other creative ways that I felt guided to do, that wasn't necessarily dependent on work. And I found that really fascinating, because it turned into a much more fluid scenario. And so it made me realize that sometimes our guidance or what we're doing can be really fluid. It doesn't have to be locked into like a linear process. And that's really fascinating to me about the energy, is that I was born and brought up, and school has taught me that things have to go through a linear, logical process, and money needs to do that too. And I think I realized that it doesn't have to be linear.
No.
Energy is not linear,
No.
So we're going to go on a quick break again. And then after that, I think I'd like to explore a little bit more about the non-linearity of energy versus, I guess, our conditioning, that things need to be mathematical and logical. And maybe there's a little dichotomy there for some of us. So we're going to go on break, and we'll be back. Well, welcome back, everyone. You're listening to Quantum Touch Radio. I'm your host, Jennifer Noel Taylor. We have on the show today Miriam Hunter, long-term Quantum Touch instructor. So we were talking about an interesting idea before the break, that this idea that things should be logical and rational. I knew I grew up with that idea. I actually studied computer science, which was all about logic. And I got my degree in that. So it's quite a leap, I think, for people to go from things need to be logical and linear to working with energy, where in the realm of energy, it's not linear, it's kind of energetic, and it's more holistic. And I wanted to narrow down on the topic of physical healing, because I think this comes up a lot, in that, so what we've been taught, at least for me, is that if I have a physical problem, I go to the doctor and they can fix me. They can give me a drug or surgery, and it's almost like a mechanical process, like the body is a machine that's broken and needs to be fixed, or we need to alter the chemistry of the body. So it's a very scientific, mechanical thing, and I just go to the shop and the doctor fixes it, and I come home and I'm better. And I used to buy into that, except I noticed it didn't work that well for chronic conditions. Like I had chronic health problems, and I was able to kind of keep the symptoms at bay with medication, but it didn't really solve the problem. So I want to talk more about the energy. It's really a paradigm shift. So we're going from this doctor can fix me over here, and versus we can heal ourselves. And these, even doctors, they can provide energy healers or even doctors or these services can provide like items to help you, but they can't fix you. We can't fix other people with energy healing. So I'd love for you to comment more about your experience with that in the nonlinear process of healing, which
Sure.
what you've seen.
Right. Well, yes, doctors can put things in place that make healing conducive, but even if you do stitches on a cut, the stitches don't repair the skin and the tissue underneath. The tissue underneath repairs itself. The stitches just help to hold it closed so that it repairs more neatly, right? So our body is made to heal itself. And when we listen to our bodies and when we take in good nutrition, when we exercise, when we're out in the sunshine, when we're drinking good water and those kinds of things, then the body can be at its optimum health. But when we start stressing out our bodies and we're sitting for 10 hours a day behind a computer, or we're not eating well, or we're just grabbing some fast food or some food that has been in the freezer for 5 years or whatever it is, we're not paying attention, not giving our bodies the building blocks that it needs. And I think part of those building blocks are actually energy. And if we are energizing our body, then it has more building blocks to use to address those issues, any issues of illness. And when we are using energy to do that, it's not just the cut that it's dealing with. It's dealing with whatever the mental thing that was going on that you weren't paying attention, that you actually cut your hand, right? So it's the mental, it's the physical, it's the emotional, it's the spiritual, it's all of that wrapped up. And so when you are energizing and raising that resonant vibration, it's going to feed all of that and not just go to a symptom, which doctors are trained to deal with symptoms, but not underlying causes.
I think the symptoms are like warning lights on your car, low engine check or whatever, or tire pressure's low. I don't think you fix that by turning off the warning light. Okay, the warning light's on, I'm gonna turn it off. So, I think the same, and I think the same goes with, we're not just trying to deal with the symptoms. I think it's a good deal with symptoms can maybe get you through a tough time, but really figuring out why your body is sick is really what we're about. And it's really interesting. I don't think it's a mechanical breakdown, like your body just forgot how to produce certain chemicals or what it needs to do. I really believe the heart of a lot of this is like a lack of energy or some sort of emotional thing that we haven't dealt with.
Right.
And what do you think is, like, when somebody's not getting better, like they've gone to the doctor, they've gone to the acupuncturist, they've tried everything and they're not getting better. What do you think's going on?
So there are a number of things that I can address here. One is, everything we've ever experienced in our lives, our body has experienced, we have some of that still with us. And some of those things we've processed and we've, dealt with, and okay, it's not a big deal. Other things we've said, whew, I don't ever want to feel that again. You tuck it somewhere deep inside the body, right? And that has an emotion attached to it. And if we don't look at and allow for that emotion to shift, to change, to come up and be looked at and dealt with, then it's going to maybe be there quietly for a while, but it's going to start talking at some point to say, you didn't deal with me, right? And I think that a lot of the roots of these systemic kinds of things are because of underlying emotional causations that have not been looked at or dealt with. And when I say looked at or dealt with, I don't mean, oh, you have to go to a talk therapist and relive by talking over this whole thing again. It's really just an indication of where you stored it in the body. And if you allow for energy, high resonant vibrational energy, to talk to it, this lower vibrating energy that's been tucked away, then it's naturally going to want to transform and shift into a higher vibration. That's when we're talking about resonance and entrainment. And that, I think, is the way that people can shift out of those kind of systemic longer term, but it's always a self-healing. It's always self-healing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting. I've had people call into the office, and they have some sort of thing going on, and I kind of sense a lot of emotion behind it, and we start talking about it, and it's like we start to uncover it, and they don't want to deal with it, and I think a lot of times that's what's going on is people may not want to deal with it or accept their feelings about something.
Mhm.
And that's just what I've seen with, especially people have these chronic long-term things.
Right.
Any
But
so anyways,
even smaller things, when like you've got a pain in the neck, right? Well, is the pain in the neck actually that you strained, or is it something that is really truly a pain in your neck? Is it an
pain in the
individual
neck.
who is a pain in your neck, right?
It's funny how our terminology kind of matches what's going on.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right? Or that stab in the back, that, feeling of pain in the back from a betrayal.
Stabbing.
Yeah, it really can feel like that. And so that the body gives you clues and cues as to where it has that lower vibrating energy. And when we allow for higher vibrating resonant energies to come in, then we can release that, and we can look at it and say, oh, that's what that was where I stored it. And now I can let it go.
Yeah. So we've come down to the end of our show. So thank you for being on our show. And I think you have a workshop coming up in a week or so.
I have a level one coming up August, this Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 16th, 17th, 18th. Are those the dates? Is that correct? And that's one level one. Then I have a weekend level one coming up, and some other classes scheduled for the fall and winter. So I hope you'll check out my schedule if anybody's interested. Love to see you in class and share some fun energy work with you.
Great. Well, thank you for being on the show today. And if anyone wants more information about Quantum Touch, you can go to www.quantumtouch.com. And thank you for listening, everyone. And we'll catch you all next week.
You've been listening to Quantum Touch Radio, supercharging your life with Jennifer Noel Taylor. Tune in on transformationtalkradio.com as you take a quantum journey and tap into universal healing quantum touch principles to create an amazing supercharged life. For more information about Quantum Touch, visit quantumtouch.com, and remember, accelerate, revitalize, and engage in your supercharged life.